How's it going, everyone? You're on our channel Everything Jax Real Estate. In today's video, I'm going over the City of Jacksonville real estate market update for July of 2024. We're seeing a lot of changes in the market currently, whether it's rate-based, price-based, or inventory-based. And so in this video, we're going to be highlighting a lot of those changes we're seeing, as well as what all occurred in July when it comes to new homes, homes going under contract, and also days of markets for all these homes that are being listed and sold. So stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to go over all that great information. All right, welcome back. So before we get started in this market update video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget either to ring that bell. So that way, when we post more videos like this in the future, you'll get notified of all of them and won't miss out on any of our good content. That being said, let's go ahead and start off with the City of Jacksonville market update report. So this market report is for July of 2024, and we're going to start off looking at the pending to list ratio for the area as a whole for July. Now, what this does is this ratio measures the amount of homes going under contract in relation to the homes on the market any given month. The higher the percentage, the more aggressive the market is, and the more busy the market is, and so therefore you do have a lot more activity in the market. Now, in this case, for July, we saw we had an 18.8% pending to list ratio. So less than 1 out of 5 homes were going under contract in July. That would be considered somewhat slow, and so that's why it's being described somewhat slow. And ultimately, this is definitely a trend we've been seeing for the last couple months, and it's different than what we saw in the previous 3-4 years. During COVID especially, but even before COVID, we had a very tame market in a sense where, we did have inventory, but we also had plenty of demand to match that inventory without it being too much of a seller's market, and allowing buyers to negotiate some. In today's market, what we are seeing is we're transitioning back to that, but because of the fact that we're coming out of a very aggressive seller's market, it is one of those things that it feels slower than it would have felt in 2018 or 2019. A lot of it has to do with the higher prices and the higher rates. Now, one thing that is helping currently is rates are starting to come down. Overall, it is expected the Fed's going to reduce their rate in September, and so what you will most likely start seeing is, as this video is being recorded, we will start to see rates come down some in anticipation of the Fed reducing their rate in September. So do keep that in mind, that normally they reduce their rates ahead of time or increase their rates ahead of time based off of what they expect the Fed to do. Now, as far as when we take a closer look, we do see that homes in that $200 to $400 price range made up the majority of homes that were pending in July. And that's not uncommon, because that's going to be your first-time home buyer price point. That's going to be the price point where a lot of people are going to be looking in, because it is a very affordable price point for Jacksonville as a whole. So with that being said, it's not surprising to see that. Now, we also have that same price range made up the majority of homes that were on the market. And so again, just like the pendings, that is, for the most part, pretty expected. What's not expected with that is, you would think when you have that many homes in that range on the market, you'd think that the median list price would be closer to there. But actually, the median list price for July was right around $500,000. So what that tells us is, even though homes in that $200,000 to $400,000 price range, when you look at individual price ranges, had the most homes available, we do actually have more homes available over $500,000 than under $500,000 for Jacksonville. Hence, why that median list price is ending up closer to $500,000 than below it. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the number of listings for sale versus the amount of pendings. What you're going to see is, again, if you're looking for a home in that $200,000 to $400,000 to $600,000 range, you have a lot of options at your disposal. And ultimately, that is good news for buyers, because with higher rates and higher prices, to have more options, at the very least, it gives you the ability that if you are going to pay top dollar for a home in your mind, at least you're being able to pick the one that you really want. Whereas during COVID, you were paying top dollar, and you almost had to sometimes settle to make sure you got the house, because if you didn't do everything you needed for it, there was another buyer probably waiting in the wings to do it instead, to get that house. So in this scenario, you do have more options, which does help. What is interesting though with this is you do see that when you go over that $1 million price range here in Jacksonville, it becomes a lot closer. There's less homes available, and there's actually a decent, fair share of homes under contract. And so what that tells us is that if you are looking for a home over $1 million in Jacksonville, you may not have as many options at your disposal, may not have as much competition, but again, paying those prices, you're not going to have a ton to really choose from. So something to keep in mind. Now, when we look at the last 6 months of data, we do see here that there was 2,812 contracts that closed in the last 6 months. It's a very healthy amount of contracts. That's roughly, what is that? 2,800 divided by 6. That's 1,200 divided by 3. So roughly about 400 homes or so a month. And realistically speaking, that's not a bad number. It does show that we are seeing a fair share of homes selling despite these higher rates and higher prices. Now, for the median list or median sold price, we do see here that the median sold price was $435,500. So we are seeing a bit of a discrepancy here between the median list price versus the median sales price of roughly $60,000, $64,000. And so ultimately that tells us is that even though homes are being listed for a much higher number, for the most part, they're not selling for that. They are selling for a much lower number, and it just tells us that there's a lot more homes selling below that 500 than above that 500. We did also see that there's 433 homes that failed to sell. And homes can fail to sell for multiple different reasons. It can be because the seller, had just a home listed at a price that didn't make sense for buyers. Could be that the listing agent could have done a better job marketing the home. It could also have been, honestly, the fact that maybe the seller had a reason to move, and that reason to move went away. So it can happen for a lot of different reasons. And at 433 listings failing to sell, that's not too uncommon when you're talking about the city of Jacksonville as a whole, because it is such a huge city. That being said, as we move forward, we want to now look at days on market. So what we're going to see for days on market is that for all homes that are currently on the market with no contracts, that median time on market is 48 days on the market. At 48 days, that is a little high for summertime, but overall it just does kind of, again, highlight that with these higher rates and higher prices, homes are taking longer to sell and they're sitting longer. And that honestly does tell us that we probably do have a fair share of homes that probably could use some reductions across the market to get more eyes on them, get more interest on them. So at 48 days, that is a decent amount of time, especially when you compare it to how long homes that are going under contract are taking on the market and selling. And so what we saw is that for the last 6 months of data, homes that actually sold were taking about 18 days to sell on the market. So there's a pretty good discrepancy there of about an extra month it takes for homes that are on the market versus homes that sell, which does tell us that, with the median list price being right around 500,000, if a lot of those homes were now closer to that 475, 450 range, we probably would see days on market come down some, which shows there's a little bit of an imbalance in the market between sellers' expectations and what buyers are actually willing to spend. And then what we also see too is for homes in the last month that sold, the days market was 20 days, which is pretty in line with the last 6 months of data. So again, it does kind of point out that if your home is priced well, it's going to sell fairly quickly. And in this case, what we do see is that the median sold price was actually around $460. So again, highlighting the fact that there's about a $30,000 imbalance in the market right now between sellers' expectations and what buyers are willing to spend. And so ultimately that's something to key into, because if you are looking to sell right now, it's very important that when deciding how to price your home that you take this data into account, unless you're willing to take home months on the market to find the right buyer. And even then, you might still have to come down that price. So just something to really highlight. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the median list to sales ratio, which for this area is 99%. The median list to sales ratio, it just measures, when a buyer and seller go under contract, how close is the seller getting to their list price. In this case, 99%, it just tells us that across the board for Jacksonville, most sellers are getting pretty dang close to the list price. Now, does that mean that they're getting pretty dang close to their original list price? Maybe, but maybe not. This measure really only takes into account where the home was currently listed at. And so if the home started at, say, 500, it came down to 475, this formula only takes into account the 475. So when you start taking into account the 500, you may actually see that the list to sales ratio is actually much larger of a difference than just 1%. That being said, it is something to highlight, but it's also something to just kind of key into is ultimately if you are looking to buy or sell, you are going to probably be pretty close, on that initial price when you do put your offer in as a buyer with where the home is currently listed at once it's all said and done. Lastly on this page, we are going to look at the absorption rate for the last 6 months, which we see as 3 months of inventory. This actually has come down from last month's video, and so what it tells us is that there are sellers who are starting to realize, okay, we have more competition, and so they're kind of holding off from selling their homes so as not to have that competition to deal with, which is allowing it to still stay fairly much a seller's market. And again, what the absorption rate is, if you're not familiar with it, is it measures how many homes it would take, or it measures how many months it would take if no new homes hit the market. So at 3 months of inventory for this absorption rate, ultimately that tells us that if we didn't have a new home in the market today, then in 90 days, we'd be out of homes to sell. Obviously that's not gonna happen, but that does give us a measure of, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? The higher that absorption rate is, the more it's a buyer's market. The lower it is, the more it's a seller's market. To put in perspective, I've seen it here anywhere from under a month of inventory during COVID to as much as 5 to 6 months of inventory. And our team has seen it where it's been 12 to 24 months of inventory back during the recession. So we've kind of seen it all as far as that's concerned. And at 3 months does mean that as a buyer you have the ability to negotiate. But it also means that the seller doesn't have to negotiate too much because there probably will be another buyer out there if they wait long enough to get at least what they're looking to get out of their home. Lastly, we're going to look at the absorption rate at different price points, just to kind of highlight the fact that ultimately at certain price points, especially in the lower end of the spectrum, really anything under $1 million, for the most part, still a seller's market. We can all sit here and say, well, rates have gone up, they're very high, prices are also very high for what we've seen in Jacksonville in the last decade or so. But at the same time, buyers always need a place to live, and sellers, will always at some point agree to a price. And so at the end of the day, what we are seeing is that it's still a very good seller's market if you're selling a home in that 2 to 400, 4 to 600, even $1 million to 1.2, and it's still a decent seller's market if you're anywhere from 600 to $1 million. And so ultimately, though, the other thing I do want to highlight with this is when you do get to the higher price points, you see inventory levels do go up because there's typically less buyers at those price points, and therefore it's kind of a balance system. As inventory goes up, that list to sales ratio goes down. And so what we see here is if you look at 2 to 2.2 months, or actually if you look at 2.4 to 2.6 months of inventory, we had 10 months of inventory, and it gave us a sale to list ratio of 91 to 94%. So again, just highlighting the fact that at these higher price points, sellers are more understanding that they have to come off those prices to get sold because of the fact that there's such a small supply of buyers at those price points. So if you liked what you saw here today, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell so you get notified when we post more content like this. And if you have any questions about anything I went over, or any comments, or anything you want to go over with me, in the description of this video is a link to my calendar as well as my phone number. So that way, if you want to meet face-to-face or through Zoom, you can schedule time with me, or if you just want to call me, always feel free. I'm always happy to chat about real estate here in Jacksonville. And ultimately, if you have any questions too, or any comments you want to just drop in the comment section, feel free to, and I'll definitely make sure to reply to every comment we can get. And with that being said, definitely stay tuned because we will be doing more of these throughout the rest of this year. And I'll see you guys again in the next market update video for the City of Jacksonville.